I went to Briar Glen prepared for Darlene's usual sharp-tongued advice, not the sound of her hand connecting with my 8-year-old son's cheek. The entire Thanksgiving table froze, waiting for the screaming match everyone expected. It never came. Instead, I looked my mother-in-law in the eye and said 6 quiet words that didn't just stop the argument, they dismantled the life she had spent 40 years building. The silence in our SUV was not empty, it was heavy, packed tight with the things we were carefully not saying to each other. We were 20 minutes outside of Briar Glen, moving through the gray, stripped-clean landscape of late November, and my hands were gripping the steering wheel hard enough to turn my knuckles white. Beside me, Miles was staring out the passenger window. He was physically present, but I knew that 1,000-yard stare. He was already retreating, pulling himself inward to survive the weekend. In the back seat, Noah was humming a quiet, shapeless tune, absorbed in a comic book. He was 8 years old. He still thought Thanksgiving was about turkey and pumpkin pie. He did not know yet that for the Campbell family, Thanksgiving was a performance review. I took a breath and rehearsed the scripts in my head. That is an interesting perspective. Darlene, we are comfortable with our decision. Thank you. Let us focus on the holiday. I had spent the last week memorizing these phrases like lines for a play. They were dull, flat, and uninteresting. That was the point. I had learned the hard way that you could not win an argument with my mother-in-law. Darlene, if you fought back, you were hysterical. If you cried, you were unstable. If you ignored her, you were rude. The only winning move was to become a gray rock, boring, unyielding, and impossible to get a reaction from. Are you okay? Miles asked. He did not look at me. He was picking at a loose thread on the cuff of his sweater. I am fine, I said. It was a lie, but it was a necessary one. If I told him I was feeling a sick, rolling dread in my stomach, he would get defensive. He would say Darlene meant well. He would say I was being sensitive. He would say all the things he had been trained to say since he was a boy. We passed the sign welcoming us to Briar Glen. The town looked like a postcard from a time that never actually existed. The storefronts were perfectly maintained. The brick sidewalks were swept clean, and the trees were wrapped in uniform white lights. It was beautiful, in the way a movie set is beautiful perfect from the front, but hollow if you knocked on the walls. I glanced at the glove compartment. My heart gave a single, hard thump against my ribs. 3 days ago, I had been looking for a tire pressure gauge and had found a white envelope stuffed under a stack of old registration papers. The return address was Hollis and Wren Legal. It was addressed to Miles. It had been postmarked 6 weeks ago, and it was still unopened. I had not asked him about it, not yet. I knew that Hollis and Wren was a high-end estate planning firm in the city. They did not handle traffic tickets or small claims. They handled trusts, inheritances, and complex family assets. Miles had never mentioned them. The fact that he had hidden the letter, and then lacked the courage to even open it, told me everything I needed to know. He was afraid. He was hiding something, or he was hiding from something. I decided to leave it in the dark for now. I needed to survive the dinner first. Mom, Noah said from the back. Can I show Grandma my drawing? I looked in the rearview mirror. Noah was holding up a sketchbook. He had drawn a dragon, messy and fierce, with 3 heads and mismatched wings. It was creative and chaotic. Exactly the kind of thing I loved about his mind. Maybe wait a little bit. Honey, I said, let us get settled in first. Why, he asked. Because Grandma likes to say hello before we look at things. I said, it was a gentle way of saying that Grandma would find something wrong with the dragon. She would say the wings were uneven. She would ask why he drew monsters instead of angels. She would imply that a boy who drew 3-headed dragons was disturbed. We pulled into the driveway of the Campbell estate. It was a sprawling Victorian house, painted a pristine cream color with dark green shutters. It sat on a hill, looking down on the rest of the neighborhood. The lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life. There was not a single leaf out of place. Despite it being autumn, I put the car in park and turned off the engine. The silence rushed back in. Ready? I asked. Miles exhaled, a long, shaky sound. He put his hand on my knee for a second. It was a weak gesture, but it was an apology. "Let us just get through it," he said. "She has been really excited to see Noah." I nodded. I did not remind him that Darlene's excitement usually felt more like a hunger. We got out of the car. The air was sharp and cold. Before we could even get our bags from the trunk, the front door opened. Darlene stood on the porch. She was 62, but she looked 10 years younger. She was wearing a cashmere sweater the color of oatmeal and dark trousers that held a sharp crease. Her hair was a helmet of blonde highlights, sprayed into submission. She did not smile immediately. She scanned us first: my boots, Miles's sweater, Noah's untucked shirt. It took less than a second. But I felt it. I was being assessed. Then, the smile snapped into place. "There they are," she called out. Her voice was musical, projecting across the lawn so the neighbors could hear how delighted she was. She descended the steps, bypassing me and Miles completely to crouch down in front of Noah. "Look at you," she said. "You have grown so much." "Hi, Grandma?" Noah said. He stepped forward to hug her. Darlene stiffened. She caught his shoulders, stopping him before he could wrap his arms around her neck. "Gentle, Noah," she said, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. "We do not tackle people. We greet them." She took his hand and shook it formally, then allowed him to lean in for a stiff, sideways embrace, shoulders back. She corrected him as she pulled away. "You are standing like a question mark. Stand like an exclamation point." Noah straightened his spine, his face falling. The joy of arrival evaporated instantly. He looked at me, his eyes wide and uncertain. I gave him a small, reassuring nod, but my blood was already heating up. "Hello, Darlene," I said, stepping forward. She looked up at me as if surprised I was there. "Peyton," she said, "you look comfortable. I wish I could wear denim to a holiday dinner. You are so brave." There it was, the first strike. She made it sound like a compliment. If I complained, I would sound petty. "She called you brave," Miles would say, but we both knew she meant slovenly. "I am wearing nice jeans and a blazer." "Darlene," I said, keeping my voice level. "Of course," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "I am just saying, I envy your ability to not care. Come inside. It is freezing." She turned and marched up the stairs. Miles grabbed the bags, keeping his head down. "Did I do it wrong?" Noah whispered to me as we walked up the path. "No," I whispered back, squeezing his hand. "You did it perfectly. Grandma is just particular." Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon, wax, and old wood. It was dim, the curtains drawn to protect the antique furniture from the sunlight. Every surface was covered in cluttered porcelain figurines, crystal bowls, framed photographs of Miles and his sister Tessa from 30 years ago. There were no photos of our wedding. There were no photos of Noah past the age of 2. I noticed a movement in the living room. Maris Klein was standing by the fireplace, holding her phone up. Maris was Darlene's best friend and lieutenant. She was a tall, angular woman who always looked like she had just smelled something sour. She ran the social media page for their church group, the Briar Glen Community Chapel. It was ostensibly a page for sharing bake sale updates and prayer requests, but in reality, it was a gossip rag disguised as a ministry. She was filming us. "Happy Thanksgiving," Maris chirped from behind the screen. "Just capturing some memories for the page. Darlene wants to show everyone the family is all together." I felt a spike of anxiety. I did not want Noah on that page. I did not want to be content for a group of women who judged each other based on the cleanliness of their baseboards. "Hi, Maris," I said, forcing a smile. "Could we maybe not film right now?" "We just got out of the car." Maris lowered the phone an inch, but the red recording dot was still glowing. "Oh, do not be silly. Peyton," she said, "you look fine. It is just for the fellowship group. People love seeing Miles." She panned the camera over to my husband, who offered a weak wave. "I will take the bags up," Miles said. Escaping toward the stairs, I stayed close to Noah. Darlene was already in the kitchen, shouting orders at someone. I guided Noah into the living room, where Tessa was sitting on the edge of the sofa. Tessa was 3 years older than Miles, and she carried the exhausted air of someone who had been fighting a losing battle for 4 decades. She was holding a glass of white wine, and her knuckles were pale. "Hey, Peyton," she said quietly. "Hey, Noah. Hi, Aunt Tessa," Noah said. "Go check out the library." "Bud," I told him, "look for that book about the ships you liked last time." Noah nodded and ran off toward the back of the house. I watched him go, making sure he was out of earshot before I turned to Tessa. "How is it going?" I asked, sitting down next to her. Tessa took a long sip of wine. "She is in rare form," Tessa murmured, looking toward the kitchen. "She has been cooking for 3 days. The pressure is about a 10 out of 10. I sighed. "Great. Listen," Tessa said, leaning in closer. Her voice dropped to a hush. "You need to be careful today." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "She has been on the phone all week," Tessa said, "to Aunt Lydia, to the cousins, to anyone who will listen. She is telling people that Noah is struggling, I repeated. Struggling with what he is on the honor roll. He plays soccer. She is telling people he is out of control," Tessa said, "that he has behavioral issues, and that you are permissive." I felt a cold chill slide down my spine. Permissive. That was code. In Darlene's world, permissive meant negligent. Why would she say that, I asked. Tessa glanced at the doorway to make sure we were alone. "I think she is laying the groundwork," Tessa said. "She keeps saying things like, 'Someone needs to step in, and Miles is too weak to do what needs to be done.'" I stared at her. Groundwork for what? Tessa shook her head. "I do not know, but she is building a case. Peyton, I can feel it. Just keep Noah close. Do not give her any ammunition." My stomach twisted. I thought about the letter in the glove box. Hollis and Wren, legal papers, trusts, and now, Darlene spreading rumors that I was an unfit mother and Noah was a wild animal. The pieces were floating in the air, but I could not quite see the picture they formed. I just knew it was ugly. "I appreciate the warning." I said, "Just be careful," Tessa said. The sound of a crash came from the dining room. It was not a shattering crash, more of a heavy thud, followed by the clatter of wood against wood. I was on my feet instantly. I ran toward the sound. Tessa right behind me, in the dining room. Noah was standing next to a small, spindly side table. A heavy brass candlestick had fallen over, and a stack of coasters had slid onto the floor. Nothing was broken. The table was upright. Noah looked terrified. I just bumped it," he stammered. "I was trying to get past to the library." Before I could speak, Darlene swept into the room. She had been in the kitchen, but she moved with the speed of a predator who heard a twig snap. "What happened?" she demanded. Her eyes went to the candlestick on the floor. She gasped, a theatrical, horrific sound, as if she had just found a body. "It is okay," I said quickly, stepping between her and Noah. "He just bumped the table. Nothing is broken." Darlene ignored me. She walked over to the table and picked up the candlestick, examining it as if searching for microscopic cracks. Then she looked at Noah. She did not yell. She did not frown. She looked at him with a deep, tragic disappointment. "Noah," she said softly, "this is exactly what I was talking about. You are just so unaware of your body. You are like a bull in a china shop. It was an accident." "Mom," Miles said. He had come down the stairs at the sound of the commotion. "Accidents happen when we are careless," Darlene said, turning her gaze to me. "This is why children need discipline. Peyton, they need to be taught to respect their surroundings. When they are allowed to run wild, things get destroyed." I felt the heat rising in my face. "He was not running wild," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He was walking to the library. The walkway is narrow. It happens. It does not happen to children who are taught to pay attention," Darlene said. She set the candlestick down with a sharp clack. I saw a movement in the corner of my eye. Maris was in the doorway connecting the dining room to the kitchen. Her phone was up. She was filming, I turned to her. Maris, stop, I said. Maris blinked, looking innocent. What, I am not posting it, she said. Stop filming my son, I said. My voice was harder than I intended. It cut through the room. Darlene looked at me, her eyebrows raising. There is no need to be aggressive. Peyton, Darlene said, Maris is just documenting the day. If you are ashamed of Noah's behavior, perhaps you should address the behavior instead of the camera. I am not ashamed of him, I said. I am protecting his privacy. Maris, put the phone down. Maris sighed, a loud, aggrieved sound, and lowered the phone. Fine, she said. Goodness, so touchy. She turned and walked back into the kitchen. But as she turned, I saw the screen. It was still recording. She had simply lowered it to her waist. She was capturing audio now, and she would likely prop it up somewhere else in a moment. I looked down at Noah. He was trembling slightly. He looked small. I am sorry. Grandma, he whispered. Darlene sighed. She reached out and brushed a piece of lint off his shoulder. I know you are sorry, she said. We just expect better. Noah, we expect you to act like a Campbell. She turned and walked back to the kitchen, shouting for Tessa to come help with the salad. I knelt down in front of Noah. Hey, I said softly. Look at me. He looked up. His eyes were swimming with tears he was trying not to shed. You did nothing wrong. I said, it was a crowded room. You bumped a table. I do that all the time. Daddy does that all the time. He sniffed. Grandma says I'm clumsy. Grandma's wrong. I said firmly, you are not clumsy. You are 8. He leaned into me, burying his face in my shoulder. I feel like I'm always doing it wrong here. He whispered. The words felt like a physical blow to my chest. Always doing it wrong. That was exactly how Darlene wanted him to feel. If he felt wrong, he would look to her to tell him how to be right. She was breaking his confidence so she could rebuild him in her image. I pulled back and looked at him. Listen to me. I said, we can leave. He looked at me, surprised. We can, yes, I said. If you want to go home, we will go home, right now. We will get in the car. We will get drive-through burgers, and we will watch movies on the couch. You say the word. He hesitated. He looked over my shoulder at Miles. Miles was standing near the staircase. He had heard everything. He looked pale. I saw the conflict warring in his face. He wanted to leave. God, he wanted to leave. I could see the desire to run written in the tension of his jaw. But then he looked toward the kitchen, where his mother was holding court, and he flinched. It was a tiny movement, a subconscious cower. He was terrified of the fallout. If we left, Darlene would not just be angry, she would be a martyr. She would wail to the entire family that we had ruined Thanksgiving. She would unleash a guilt campaign that would last until Easter. Noah saw his father's fear. No, Noah said quietly. It is okay. I want to have pie. He was protecting his father. My 8-year-old son was absorbing the toxicity in the room to save his father from having to make a hard choice. I stood up and looked at Miles. I did not hide the disappointment in my eyes. He looked away. Okay, I said to Noah, but if you change your mind, you tell me, and you stay with me. Okay, he said. Why do you not go help Daddy set the table? I said. Noah went to Miles, and they moved into the dining room, moving quietly, like guests in a museum who were afraid of the security guards. I needed a moment. The air in the house felt thin, like there wasn't enough oxygen. My chest was tight. I walked toward the pantry, a small walk-in closet off the kitchen where Darlene kept her linens and dry goods. I needed 30 seconds of darkness and silence to reset my face. I needed to breathe before I said something that would give Darlene exactly what she wanted, a reaction. I stepped inside the pantry and pulled the door almost shut, leaving it cracked just a sliver so I wouldn't be trapped in the pitch black. I leaned my head against the cool shelves, smelling dried herbs and flour. 1, 2, 3. I counted my breaths. 4, 5, 6. From the kitchen, I heard voices. They were low, hushed, but clear. She is just so defensive, Darlene was saying. It was not Tessa she was talking to. It was a deeper, raspy voice, Cousin Joyce, a woman who lived 3 towns over and worshipped the ground Darlene walked on. "Well, you have to be patient," Joyce said. "I have been patient for 8 years," Darlene hissed. The sweetness was gone from her voice. It was cold and hard as iron. "The boy is a nervous wreck. She coddles him until he cannot function. Did you see him almost destroy the dining room? He just bumped a table." "Darlene," Joyce said reasonably. "He is unstable," Darlene insisted. "Just like her. She has made him soft. Miles sees it too. But he is too terrified of her to speak up." I held my breath. My hands balled into fists at my sides. "Well, what can you do?" Joyce asked. "She is the mother." Darlene made a humming sound, thoughtful and chilling. "Things change," she murmured. "We are documenting everything. Maris is getting wonderful footage of how she lets him run wild. And I have spoken to the committee." "The committee?" Joyce asked. "The family care committee at the chapel." Darlene said, "They are very concerned about the environment Noah is being raised in." There was a pause. The silence stretched, heavy and dangerous. "You are not serious," Joyce whispered. "Darlene, that is extreme. It is necessary," Darlene said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "Miles needs a push. He needs to see that he has options." I pressed my ear closer to the crack in the door. My heart was hammering so hard I was afraid they would hear it. "What kind of options?" Joyce asked. Darlene's voice dropped lower, but it carried the weight of a judge passing a sentence. "By Christmas, this will be handled," she said. "I have the paperwork ready. Once Miles sees the reality of what she is doing to that boy, he will sign, and then we can finally bring Noah back into the fold properly." I stopped breathing. Paperwork. By Christmas. Bring Noah back. The letter in the glove box. The filming. The rumors about me being permissive. The accident with the table that Darlene had immediately framed as a behavioral issue. It wasn't just general mother-in-law nastiness. It wasn't just her being difficult. She was building a custody case. She was planning to take my son. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stood in the dark pantry, surrounded by jars of artisanal jam and boxes of crackers, and I felt the world tilt on its axis. Darlene wasn't trying to ruin Thanksgiving. She was trying to ruin my life. She was trying to paint me as incompetent, document incidents via Maris's camera, and pressure Miles using the financial leverage of the trust I suspected was in that letter to separate us. I should have been terrified. I should have burst into tears. But as I stood there in the dark, a strange thing happened. The fear evaporated. The anxiety about saying the wrong thing, about keeping the peace, about being polite, it all vanished. It was replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She wanted a war. She had been planning a war. She thought she was fighting a scared young mother who was desperate for approval. She had no idea who she was actually in the ring with. I pushed the pantry door open. I did not slam it. I stepped out into the kitchen. Darlene and Joyce were standing by the island, snapping green beans. They turned to look at me. Darlene's face composed itself instantly into a mask of pleasant concern. "Peyton," she said, "I didn't see you there. Were you looking for something?" I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the lines of calculation around her eyes. I saw the fear beneath the arrogance. She needed control because she was terrified of being irrelevant. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. Just getting some air. "Darlene," I said. I walked past them, toward the dining room where my husband and son were setting the table. I was not going to run. I was not going to leave. I was going to stay for dinner. And I was going to burn her playhouse to the ground. The dining room was a masterpiece of intimidation. Darlene had set the table with her grandmother's Haviland china, the delicate plates rimmed in gold that chipped if you looked at them too hard. The centerpiece was a sprawling arrangement of dried wheat, pheasant's feathers, and blood-red roses that looked less like a celebration of harvest and more like a funeral spray. 12 tapered candles flickered in the drafty air, casting long, dancing shadows against the flocked wallpaper. I took my seat next to Noah. Miles sat across from me, his eyes fixed on his empty plate, as if he were trying to memorize the pattern of the porcelain. Tessa was on my left, already gripping her wineglass like a lifeline. At the head of the table, Darlene presided like a queen on her throne, flanked by Maris Klein, who had propped her phone against a crystal water pitcher. The dark eye of the camera lens pointed directly at us. "Let us bow our heads," Darlene commanded. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a gavel. We all bowed. I kept my eyes open, watching Noah. He had his hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white. "Lord," Darlene began, her voice pitching into a practiced, trembling reverence. "We come to you today with heavy hearts, but hopeful spirits. We thank you for this bounty. We thank you for this home, which has stood as a beacon of moral clarity for 4 generations." She paused, letting the silence stretch until the floorboards creaked. "We ask for your guidance. Lord," she continued, "guide those among us who lack direction. Soften the hearts of those who are stubborn. Bring discipline to the unruly, and wisdom to the permissive. Protect our children from the confusion of the modern world, and help us, the elders, to step in when their parents falter. We ask for the strength to do what is hard, even when it is misunderstood." "Amen, amen," murmured the table. I lifted my head and felt the blood thumping behind my ears. It was not a prayer. It was a press release. It was a declaration of intent, spoken to God but aimed directly at me. Darlene smiled, picking up the carving knife. "Well," she said brightly, "now that we are spiritually fed, let us eat. Miles, dear, pass your plate. You look thin. I worry you are not getting enough sustenance at home." Miles passed his plate silently. "We try to eat healthy." "Mom," he mumbled. "Healthy is fine," Darlene said, slicing a thick slab of turkey. "But a man needs substance. You cannot run a company on kale and good intentions." She plated the meat and handed it back, then turned her gaze to Noah. "And you?" "Noah," she said, "I made the stuffing without the walnuts this year. Just for you. Even though walnuts are excellent brain food, but we must accommodate everyone's sensitivities. Thank you." "Grandma?" Noah said, small voice. I reached for the bowl of green beans to serve Noah, but Darlene's hand shot out and stopped the bowl from moving. "Peyton," she said, "let him serve himself. He is 8. "Darlene," I said, keeping my voice pleasant, "the bowl is heavy silver. It is hot. He needs to learn dexterity," she countered. "If he never handles heavy things, he will never develop strength. You do everything for him. It is why he is so tentative." I slowly withdrew my hand. Noah looked at me, panic flaring in his eyes. "It is okay, buddy," I said softly. "Just use 2 hands. I am right here." Noah reached for the heavy silver bowl. His small wrists trembled under the weight, but he managed to scoop a spoonful of beans onto his plate without spilling. He set the bowl down with a clatter that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Careful," Darlene snapped. "That table is mahogany." "He did it perfectly," I said. "Good job." "Noah," Darlene hummed, a sound of low disapproval, and turned to Maris. "Did you get that?" "Maris?" she asked. Maris nodded, tapping the screen of her phone. "The lighting is a bit dim, but yes, I can brighten it in post." Post, I thought, as if this were a documentary. The Fall of the House of Campbell. The dinner proceeded in a gridlock of tension. Every clink of silverware felt aggressive. Every question Darlene asked was a trap door. She asked Miles about his work, then interrupted his answer to ask if he was still seeing that therapist I had recommended, implying that therapy was a weakness I had inflicted upon him. She asked Tessa about her dating life, then sighed loudly before Tessa could answer, signaling that the answer was disappointing. Then, just as the plates were being cleared for dessert, Darlene stood up. She walked to the sideboard and returned with a large ceramic bowl I had never seen before. It was painted with rustic scenes of harvest cornucopias and pilgrims. "I have decided to start a new tradition this year," Darlene announced. She placed the bowl in the center of the table. "We call this the Heirloom Gratitude Bowl." She clasped her hands together, Too often. We rush through our thanks, she said. Tonight, I want us to go around the table. Each person must say one thing they are truly grateful for. But it must be deep. It must be honest. No superficialities. She looked around the table, her eyes landing on me for a fraction of a second before moving on. I will start, she said. I am grateful for the burden of leadership. It is not easy to be the matriarch. It is not easy to be the one who sees the cracks in the foundation and has to patch them, often without thanks. But I am grateful that God gave me the spine to bear it. She looked at Miles. Your turn, son. Miles cleared his throat. He looked like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. I am grateful for the food, he said, and for everyone being together. Darlene frowned. That is a bit generic. Miles, but we will accept it. Tessa. Tessa swirled her wine. I am grateful for wine, she deadpanned. Darlene's lips thinned. Maris beamed from behind the camera. I am grateful for you. Darlene, for your guidance and your friendship. You are the glue that holds this community together. Thank you. Maris, Darlene said, her voice dripping with false modesty. Noah. It is your turn. Noah froze. He looked at the bowl, then at Darlene, then at me. The room went silent. I could feel the pressure radiating off Darlene. She wanted him to thank her. She wanted him to thank her for the food, for the house, for the instruction on how to stand like an exclamation point. She wanted a public declaration that her way was the right way. Noah took a small breath. He looked directly at me. I'm grateful for my mom. He said, his voice was clear, the most honest sound in the room, because she makes me feel safe, even when I'm scared. She tells me I am good just how I am. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a beautiful, pure sentiment. It was the kind of thing any grandmother should have wept with joy to hear. But Darlene did not weep. Her face went rigid. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving 2 spots of rouge standing out like bruises. Safe. The word hung in the air. By saying he felt safe with me, Noah had inadvertently implied the opposite, that he did not feel safe here, that he did not feel safe with her. Darlene laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound, like dead leaves crunching. Well, she said, that is interesting. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Noah. Safe from what? Noah, she asked. The world. The truth I do not know, Noah stammered. Just safe. Darlene turned her gaze to me. Her eyes were cold, hard flints. It is fascinating, she said, how children parrot what they hear. Excuse me, I said. Oh, come now. Peyton, Darlene said, waving her hand. It is a bit transparent. Is it not coaching the boy to say he feels safe with you? It is a very specific word choice. It sounds like something from a courtroom script, not the mind of an 8-year-old. I did not coach him. I said, my voice was low, trembling with suppressed rage. He is expressing his feelings. He is expressing your insecurity, Darlene corrected. You are using him as a prop. It is manipulative. Peyton, to twist a child's gratitude into a statement about your own validity, it is frankly disturbing. I stood up. I had enough. That is enough. Darlene, I said, we are not doing this. Sit down, Darlene ordered. She did not raise her voice, but the command whipped through the air. We are not finished. I am finished. I said, Noah, get your coat. I turned to Noah, but Darlene moved faster than I expected. She stood up and reached into the pocket of her cardigan. Wait, she said. There was something in her tone, a shift from defensive to triumphant, that made me pause. Since we are talking about honesty, she said, pulling something out of her pocket, perhaps we should talk about this. She opened her hand. Resting on her palm was a small, sterling silver placecard holder. It was shaped like a turkey. It belonged to the set that was currently on the table. I found this in Noah's jacket pocket when I hung it up, Darlene said. I stared at the silver turkey. That is impossible. I said, Noah has not been near the coat rack. I found it before dinner. Darlene said, I checked the pockets because I thought I saw him hiding something, and I found this. She looked at Noah with a face of tragic sorrow. Stealing. Noah, she said. From your own grandmother. Noah's mouth dropped open. I did not, he cried. I never took that. Darlene shook her head. Do not lie. Noah, lying makes it worse. I know you like shiny things. I saw you looking at them earlier. But to take it, to hide it, she looked at the table, addressing the audience of Miles, Tessa, and Maris. This is what happens when there are no boundaries, she said softly. This is the result of permissive parenting. A child who thinks he can take what he wants, a child who steals family silver. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie in my bones. Noah was the kind of kid who returned a penny if he found it on the sidewalk. He was terrified of breaking rules. He would never, ever steal. And Darlene knew it. She had planted it. She had taken the card holder from the buffet, slipped it into her pocket, and waited for the moment she needed to destroy his credibility. That is a lie, I said. Darlene's eyes snapped to mine. Are you calling me a liar in my own house? She asked. I am saying Noah did not take that. I said, I do not know how it got in your pocket, Darlene, but it did not come from his jacket. It is my word against a child who has already demonstrated he is out of control today. Darlene said, a child who knocks over furniture, a child who has been coached to lie about his feelings. Noah let out a sob. It was a high, thin sound of pure distress. He buried his face in his hands. I did not do it, he wailed. Mommy, I did not do it. I moved. I did not think. I just moved. I walked around the table to get to him. Darlene stepped in front of me. She was smaller than me, but in that moment, she seemed to take up the entire room. She blocked my path to my son. Step aside. Darlene, I said, you will not coddle him. She hissed. Not this time. He needs to sit in his guilt. He needs to feel the shame of what he has done. That is how they learn. He did not do anything I said. My voice rising. You are framing an 8-year-old. Framing. Darlene laughed, glancing at Maris. Listen to her. She sounds paranoid. I looked at Maris. She was standing near the kitchen door now. The phone held high. Zooming in. Maris, put that damn phone away, Tessa shouted from the table. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is insane. Stop filming. Leave it, Darlene snapped at Tessa. Her eyes never left mine. This is family history. We need a record. When people ask why we had to intervene, we need to show them this. Intervene. The word echoed the conversation I had heard in the pantry. By Christmas, this will be handled. She was staging a crime scene. She was creating evidence of a troubled child and a volatile mother to show her committee, her lawyers, and eventually, a judge. I went cold. The anger vanished, replaced by the tactical clarity I had felt in the pantry. If I screamed, I lost. If I physically pushed her, I lost. If I dragged Miles into it and he failed me, I lost. I took a step back. I lowered my hands. I looked at Noah. He was shaking, tears streaming down his face. Noah, I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice of a pilot announcing turbulence. Stand up. Noah looked at me, sniffing. Stand up. Honey, I repeated. We are taking a break. He pushed his chair back and stood up. Sit down, Darlene barked. She turned her head toward him, her finger pointing at his chair. You do not move until you confess and apologize. Noah froze, caught between two commands. Come here. Noah, I said. I walked around the other side of the table, avoiding Darlene, and reached for his hand. Darlene moved to intercept us. She was fast. She reached out, her hand aiming for Noah's shoulder, intending to shove him back into his seat or grab his arm to hold him in place. Noah flinched. He jerked backward, his elbow knocking into the edge of the table. Darlene's hand did not find his shoulder. It found his face. It was not a wind-up punch. It was a sharp, open-handed slap, a frantic, aggressive gesture meant to control, which connected with the side of his cheek with a loud, wet smack. The sound stopped the world. Noah gasped. His hand flew to his cheek. He did not cry out. He went completely silent, his eyes wide with shock. Darlene froze. Her hand hovered in the air for a split second before she snatched it back to her chest. I barely touched him. She stammered. The silence in the room was a physical weight. Miles was standing now, his napkin clutched in his hand, his mouth open. Tessa had her hands over her mouth. Maris had lowered the phone slightly. But I knew she had captured it. "He moved," Darlene said quickly, her voice pitching up. "He jerked into my hand. I was just trying to stop him. I barely grazed him. He is fine. Look at him. He is fine." Noah's cheek was turning red. The imprint of fingers was beginning to bloom on his pale skin. I did not scream. I did not lunge at her. I walked over to Noah. I knelt down and checked his face. I turned his head gently to the light. The skin was hot. He was trembling so hard his teeth were chattering. "Did she hurt you?" I asked quietly. He nodded. A single, jerky movement. "Okay," I said. I stood up. I turned to face Darlene. She was already rebuilding her reality. She was smoothing her cardigan, adjusting her pearls. "Stop looking at me like that." "Peyton," she said, regaining her composure. "If he hadn't been disobeying, it wouldn't have happened. It was an accident. Do not make a scene." I stepped between her and my son. I stood so close to her that I could smell the stale lavender of her perfume and the fear sweating out of her pores. She took a half step back. Unnerved by my proximity, I looked her in the eye. I let her see everything: the knowledge of the letter, the pantry conversation, the rumors, the filming, the staged theft. I let her see that I knew exactly what she was, and that I was no longer afraid of her. Then, I spoke. I did not shout. I spoke in a voice that was low, flat, and absolute. "This ends today, not tomorrow." Darlene blinked, her mouth open to retort, to offer another excuse, another spin, but the words died in her throat, because for the first time in her life, she looked at a daughter-in-law and didn't see a victim. She saw a witness. The room remained frozen. Miles didn't move. Tessa didn't breathe. I turned my back on her. "Come on, Noah," I said. I took his hand, and we walked out of the dining room. The door to the guest room clicked shut, sealing us inside a bubble of sudden, ringing silence. The air in the room was stale, smelling of cedar chips and disuse, but it felt safer than the perfumed toxicity of the dining room. I did not fall apart. I did not let my hands shake. I was a mother first, and a woman in shock second. "Sit here, buddy," I said, guiding Noah to the edge of the high, four-poster bed. He climbed up, his legs dangling. He was not crying anymore, which scared me more than the tears. He was silent, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at a pattern in the rug. The red mark on his cheek was brightening, the imprint of Darlene's fingers beginning to swell against his pale skin. I went to the adjoining bathroom and ran a washcloth under cold water. I wrung it out until it was just damp, fighting the urge to rip the towel rack off the wall. I needed to be calm. Noah needed a rock, not a reflection of his own fear. I walked back and sat beside him. "Here," I said softly, "put this on your cheek. It will feel good." Noah took the cloth and held it to his face. He flinched when the cold fabric touched his skin. "Am I in trouble?" he whispered. His voice was so small it barely carried across the quiet room. I felt a crack in my chest, a fissure running deep through my heart. Darlene had done her work well. She had struck him, humiliated him, and accused him of theft, and his first instinct was still to wonder if he was the one who had failed. "No," I said. I kept my voice low and firm. "You are not in trouble. You did not do anything wrong. Do you hear me? Not one single thing. But Grandma said—" "Grandma was wrong." I interrupted. "Adults can be wrong. Noah, even grandmas. What happened downstairs was not your fault. You did not steal that place card holder, and she should never, ever have touched you." He looked at me, his eyes searching my face for the truth. "I want to go home," he said. "I know." I said, "And we are going to—" "We just need a minute to get our things together. Just breathe with me." Remember the box breathing we do before soccer? In for 4. Hold for 4. He nodded. We breathed together. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. I watched his shoulders drop half an inch. I watched the terror recede just enough for him to be a little boy again. Instead of a defendant in Darlene's court, the door handle turned. I stiffened, putting my arm around Noah's shoulders. Miles slipped into the room. He looked like a man who had just walked away from a car crash. His face was gray, his eyes darting nervously toward the door as if he expected his mother to be right behind him. He closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling a long, shaky breath. "Jesus," he whispered. "Peyton, He looked at me, then at Noah. He saw the washcloth held against our son's cheek. He saw the red, angry skin peeking out from underneath it. He swallowed hard. "She did not mean to," he started, the old script kicking in automatically. It was a reflex, a survival mechanism he had honed over 30 years. She was just trying to grab his shoulder. She has bad depth perception. You know she gets frantic when she thinks things are out of control. I did not speak. I just looked at him. I looked at the man I had married, the father of my child, standing there making excuses for a woman who had just assaulted his son. Miles stopped. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. He looked at Noah again. He really looked. He saw the fear in his son's eyes, not fear of the dark, or monsters, but fear of her, and he saw the mark. There was no denying the geometry of it. It was not a graze. It was a slap. The words died in his throat. I did not scream at him. I did not demand he choose sides. I did not ask him to defend my honor. I had realized something downstairs. In that split second when I stood between Darlene and Noah, I could not save Miles. I could only save us. I stood up, keeping one hand on Noah's knee. "Are you coming with us or not?" I asked. It was a simple question. There was no venom in it, only clarity. Miles blinked. "What we are leaving?" I said. "I am packing the car. We are driving back to Lakewood Heights tonight. The question is whether you are in the car with us, or if you are staying here to finish dessert." He looked at me, stunned. "Peyton, we cannot just leave. It is Thanksgiving. My aunts are here. It will look like we are parents protecting our child." I said, "Or it will look like I am a mother protecting my child, and you are a son protecting his mother." I walked over to the dresser where our overnight bag was sitting. I unzipped it and started throwing our clothes in. I did not fold them. I just cleared the drawers. Miles pushed off the door. "Peyton, please, if we leave now, she will never let us hear the end of it. She is already downstairs telling Aunt Lydia that you screamed at her. She is saying you used Noah as a weapon to escalate the argument." I paused, a pile of socks in my hand. "Of course she is," I said. "And Maris is filming the aftermath. I assume Maris says the camera missed the beginning." Miles said helplessly, "She says it only caught you stepping in and looking aggressive." I laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound. "Convenient." I said, "I threw the socks in the bag." "Miles," I said, "I do not care what she tells Aunt Lydia. I do not care what Maris edits together on her iPhone. She hit our son." I pointed to Noah. "Look at him. Miles." Miles looked. Noah lowered the washcloth. The red mark was vivid against his skin. Miles flinched as if he had been slapped himself. He squeezed his eyes shut and ran a hand through his hair. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." I did not stop to celebrate his agreement. I did not have time. "Get your coat," I said, "and get the keys." Miles nodded. Moving like a sleepwalker. "I will. I will go check the closet in the hall." He slipped back out the door. I went back to packing. My movements were efficient, robotic. I grabbed Noah's backpack. As I picked it up, something fell out of the side pocket the silver place card holder Darlene had found in his jacket. She must have shoved it in there during the chaos. Or perhaps she had dropped it on the table and I had swept it up with his things. I picked it up. It was heavy, a solid piece of silver shaped like a turkey. Darlene had claimed it was a family heirloom. Family history, she had said. I turned it over in my hand. On the bottom, there was a small, gold foil sticker. It was half peeled off, as if someone had tried to remove it in a hurry but failed. Everwood Antiques. Inventory 402. I stared at the sticker. Everwood Antiques was a shop on the other side of Briar Glen. It wasn't an upscale place. It was a dusty junk shop near the highway. And then I remembered. Last week, I had driven past Everwood on my way to get gas. I had seen Darlene's champagne-colored Lexus parked in the front lot. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time. Darlene loved antiquing, but now, looking at the cheap sticker on the bottom of the heirloom, the picture snapped into focus. This wasn't her grandmother's silver. She had bought this prop days ago. She had gone to a shop where she thought she wouldn't be seen, purchased a small, pocketable item, and brought it to Thanksgiving with the specific intention of planting it on Noah. She hadn't just reacted to his manipulative comment. She had come to the table ready to frame him. The script had been written before we even pulled into the driveway. A cold chill washed over me. This was sociopathic. It was the calculated destruction of an 8-year-old's character to prove a point about his mother's parenting. A soft knock on the door made me jump. It wasn't Miles. The knock was too tentative. I opened the door a crack. Tessa was standing there. She looked terrified, holding a glass of wine in one hand and a crumpled napkin in the other. She did not come in. She just shoved the napkin into my hand. I heard them in the kitchen. She whispered. Her breath smelled of Chardonnay and panic. She told Maris to send the clip to the committee immediately. She said, "Send it now, while emotions are fresh." The committee, I asked. The Family Care Committee. Tessa hissed. At the church. She is filing a concern report. Peyton, tonight. She is trying to get ahead of the story. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. "Get out of here," she whispered. "Just go." She turned and hurried back down the hall before I could say thank you. I closed the door and locked it. I unfolded the napkin. Inside, scrawled in eyeliner, was a hastily written note. She has been talking to a lawyer about grandparents' rights for months. She wants visitation, unsupervised. I crumpled the napkin in my fist. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. I had texted Jocelyn Hart 5 minutes ago. Jocelyn was a guidance counselor at the elementary school in Briar Glen, and one of the few people in this town who saw through Darlene's veneer of sanctity. Jocelyn, do not engage. Do not argue. Leave immediately. Write down everything that happened with timestamps as soon as you are safe. Use factual language only. At 6:15 p.m., Darlene struck Noah on the left cheek. No adjectives, no emotional descriptors. If she is building a case, you build a log. Take a picture of the mark on his face. Now, I looked at Noah. "Baby," I said, "I need to take a picture of your cheek, just for the doctor." "Okay, to make sure it is okay," Noah nodded. He trusted me. I snapped 3 photos, close up, from the side, and one showing his whole face. The lighting was poor, but the redness was undeniable. Then, I remembered the letter. When we had arrived, I had taken the envelope from the glove box. It had been a split-second decision, a gut feeling that I shouldn't leave anything important in the car where Darlene's prying eyes might find it if she went snooping for evidence of a messy vehicle. I had shoved it into the inner zipper pocket of my purse. I grabbed my purse and dug out the envelope. Hollis and Wren Legal. Attention, Mr. Miles Campbell. I didn't care about privacy anymore. We were past that. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single, heavy sheet of cream-colored paper. I scanned the legal jargon, my eyes catching on key phrases regarding the Campbell Family Trust. Disbursement of funds scheduled for the beneficiary's 35th birthday. Contingent upon the absence of any character clauses activated by the trustee Mrs. Darlene Campbell current valuation of assets. I froze. Miles was turning 35 in 2 months. The letter wasn't a bill. It was a notification of an approaching disbursement. A trust fund set up by Miles's grandfather, Miles's father's father, was set to pay out directly to Miles. But there was a catch. The character clauses. The letter stated that the trustee Darlene had the power to delay or revoke the disbursement if the beneficiary was deemed morally compromised or unstable. I lowered the letter. This was it. This was the engine driving the machine. Darlene wasn't just losing control of her son emotionally. She was about to lose control of him financially. If Miles got this money, he would be independent. He could buy a house without her help. He could start his own business. He would no longer need her approval to survive. Unless she could prove he was unstable. Unless she could prove his life was chaotic. Unless she could prove his wife was crazy and his son was a thief. If she could paint Miles's domestic life as a disaster, she could trigger the clause. She could keep the money under her control. She could keep him under her control. That was why she needed the video. That was why she needed the theft. That was why she had been telling the committee we were failing. She was manufacturing a moral crisis to keep the purse strings tied. The door opened again. Miles slipped back in. He was wearing his coat. He looked sick. I got the keys, he said. They are all in the living room having coffee. Darlene is holding court. I held up the letter. Miles stopped. He looked at the paper in my hand, and his face crumbled. You opened it, he said, dull voice. I walked over to him. I did not yell. The anger I had felt earlier had crystallized into something colder and more useful. I wasn't trying to win an argument anymore. I was dismantling a system. She has been threatening you, hasn't she? I asked. Miles sank onto the edge of the bed, putting his head in his hands. She told me. He started, his voice cracking. She told me that if I didn't get you in line, she would make things hard. She said she had discretion, that she could freeze everything. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because I was ashamed. Miles whispered, I am 34 years old. Peyton, and I'm still scared of my mother taking away my allowance. It is pathetic. It is not pathetic. I said, it is abuse. It is financial coercion. I sat down next to him. Miles, listen to me. She is not protecting the family legacy. She is protecting her leverage. She staged the theft downstairs. Miles looked up. What the place card holder? I said, it has a sticker from Everwood Antiques on the bottom. She bought it. She planted it. She isn't worried about Noah's morals. She is building a case to prove that your life is a mess so she can keep the trust money. Miles stared at me. He looked like a man waking up from a long, confusing dream. She planted it, he repeated. Yes, I said. And she slapped your son because her plan wasn't working fast enough. Miles looked at Noah, who was watching us with wide eyes from the bed. He looked at the red mark on Noah's face. He looked at the letter in my hand. Something shifted in his eyes. The fear didn't disappear. But it was overtaken by a sudden, stark realization of how alone he truly was in that house. She is going to ruin us, Miles whispered. If we leave, she will burn it all down. Let her, I said. We have the matches too. I stood up and zipped the bag. We are leaving. Now. How Miles asked, if we walk through that room, she will make a scene. She will block the door. No, she won't, I said, because we aren't going to give her a scene. We are going to give her exactly what she pretends to want. I pulled Noah's coat onto him and zipped it up. I wiped his face one last time. We are going to be polite, I said. We are going to be calm. We are not going to scream. We are going to thank her for dinner, and we are going to walk out the door. But she will. Miles started. Let her talk, I said. Let her say whatever she wants. We are not playing her game anymore. We are leaving the stadium. I grabbed the bag. I took Noah's hand. Ready? I asked Miles. He took a deep breath. He stood up and buttoned his coat. He looked terrified, but he nodded. Ready. We walked out of the guest room. The hallway was dark, the shadows stretching long and thin against the walls. We could hear the murmur of voices from the living room. It sounded like a party. It sounded like a tribunal. We descended the stairs. The wood creaked under our feet. When we reached the bottom, we turned toward the living room. They were all there. Darlene sat in her wingback chair, a cup of coffee in her hand. Maris was next to her, scrolling on her phone. Tessa was staring into the fireplace. Aunt Lydia and Cousin Joyce were leaning in. listening to Darlene speak. "It is just so hard to watch," Darlene was saying, her voice thick with performative grief. "To see a child so neglected that he acts out like this." We stepped into the doorway. Darlene stopped talking. The room went silent. All eyes turned to us. We were wearing our coats. We were carrying our bags. Darlene set her coffee cup down. She did not look upset. She looked vindicated. "Going somewhere?" she asked. I stepped forward. I did not let go of Noah's hand. I did not look at Maris's phone, which I knew was recording from her lap. "We are heading out," I said. My voice was light, conversational. Darlene raised an eyebrow. "Before pie?" she asked. "That seems abruptly rude, but I suppose I shouldn't be surprised." I smiled. It was a tight, polite smile, the kind you give to a stranger who has just bumped into you on the subway. "It has been a long day." I said, "Noah is tired. We are going to get him home to bed." I looked at the rest of the room. "Thank you for dinner." Darlene. "The turkey was lovely, Aunt Lydia. It was good to see you." Tessa. "Thank you for the wine. I did not mention the slap. I did not mention the theft. I did not mention the letter." Darlene looked confused. She had expected an explosion. She had expected me to scream. "You hit my son," so she could reply. "I barely touched him." "You are hysterical." She had no script for a polite exit. She looked at Miles. "Miles," she said. Her voice had a sharp edge to it now. A warning. "You are leaving." Miles looked at his mother. He looked at the woman who held his inheritance in one hand and his reputation in the other. "Yes," Miles said. His voice shook slightly, but he did not look away. "We are leaving." Darlene's eyes narrowed. "Well," she said, "if you think that is best." She paused, letting the threat hang in the air. "I think it is best," Darlene continued, smiling a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Perhaps some time apart will help you. Reflect on the situation. We will be here when you are ready to apologize." She was giving us permission to leave, framing it as her idea. "I am banishing you." She was saying, "You are not quitting. You are fired." I did not correct her. I did not care about her narrative anymore. I cared about the door. "Of course," I said. "Happy Thanksgiving." I turned and walked toward the front door. Miles opened it. The cold night air rushed in, smelling of dead leaves and freedom. As we stepped onto the porch, I heard Darlene's voice drift from the living room, loud enough for us to hear. "Poor Miles," she sighed. "He looks so tired. She really has him on a leash, doesn't she?" I felt Miles stiffen beside me. "Don't," I whispered. "Keep walking." We walked down the steps. We walked down the perfectly manicured path. We got into the car. I buckled Noah in. I got into the driver's seat. Miles got into the passenger side. I started the engine. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror. I could see the silhouette of Darlene standing in the window, watching us go. She thought she had won. She thought she had successfully shamed us into fleeing. She thought she had the footage, the witness testimony, and the financial leverage to crush us. She didn't know about the sticker on the silver turkey. She didn't know I had the letter. She didn't know that by slapping my son, she had just handed me the one thing she couldn't spin, couldn't buy, and couldn't pray away. 'Cause I drove through the dark streets of Briar Glen, the silence in the car feeling different now. It wasn't the heavy silence of the drive up. It was the focused, electric silence of a team preparing for the game of their lives. I reached over and took Miles's hand. His palm was sweating. "We are not going back," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," I said, turning onto the highway. "We aren't." But the war followed us home. The morning sun in Lakeward Heights hit the kitchen table differently than it did in Briar Glen. Here, the light was unfiltered, sharp, and honest. It did not have to fight through heavy velvet drapes or illuminate dust motes dancing over antique mahogany. It just hit the laminate counter and the box of cereal. Clean and simple. Noah sat at the table in his pajamas. He was staring at the 2 boxes of cereal I had placed in front of him. "You choose." I said, "You can have the flakes or the puffs, or both, or neither." You decide." He looked up at me. His left cheek was still slightly swollen, the red mark having faded to a dull, bluish bruise that looked like a shadow in the dim light, but his eyes were less haunted than they had been 12 hours ago. "Can I have toast?" he asked quietly. I smiled. "You can absolutely have toast." It was a small thing, but it was the only strategy I had. Choice, agency. At Darlene's house, Noah was a prop to be positioned. Here, I needed him to remember that he was a person who could say no, who could choose toast, who could occupy space without apologizing for it. I made the toast. I buttered it exactly how he liked, all the way to the edges. We sat in silence, the only sound the crunch of bread and the hum of the refrigerator. "I am sorry about the turkey," he said suddenly. I stopped with my coffee mug halfway to my mouth. I set it down slowly. "Noah, look at me." He looked. "You did not take that turkey. Grandma put it in your pocket." He frowned, struggling with the logic of it. Why would she do that? Because she is confused about how to love people. I said, I chose my words carefully. I did not want to burden him with the pathology of a narcissist, but I refused to let him carry the weight of a sin he did not commit. She wanted to be the one to fix a problem, so she created one. That is on her, not you. He chewed his toast thoughtfully. "We are not going back there." "Are we?" he asked. "Not for a long time, I promised, and never without me right next to you." He nodded, seemingly satisfied, and went back to eating. I wished I could feel the same peace, but inside, I was vibrating with a frequency of anxiety that felt like a low-voltage wire touching my spine. Miles was still asleep upstairs, or pretending to be. He had come home and collapsed, the physical toll of defying his mother finally catching up to his body. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Aunt Lydia. "Peyton, I am just reaching out to check on you. We were all so worried after your outburst yesterday. It is important to model stability for Noah." My fingers hovered over the screen. Outburst. I had not raised my voice. I had not thrown anything. I had spoken 6 words and walked out. I did not reply. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Cousin Joyce. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message immediately. "Hi, Peyton. It is Joyce. I just wanted to see if you were calmer today. Darlene is devastated, obviously, but she is willing to forgive. We just think you need to address this. Volatility. It is not healthy for a child to see his mother so unhinged." There it was. Volatility. Unhinged. They were using the same words. It was a script. Darlene had been up early, or perhaps she had stayed up all night, drafting the narrative. She was calling the lieutenants, feeding them the key terms, and dispatching them to pressure me. I felt a flash of heat in my chest, the urge to call Joyce back and scream, to tell her exactly what her beloved aunt had done to an 8-year-old boy. But I remembered the pantry. By Christmas, this will be handled. If I screamed, I was volatile. If I argued, I was defensive. If I cried, I was unstable. I took a deep breath. I picked up my phone and texted Jocelyn Hart. "Me. The flying monkeys have arrived. Lydia and Joyce calling me volatile, using the same script." Jocelyn replied instantly. "Jocelyn, do not respond. Do not jade, justify, argue, defend, explain. Start the document. Now, open a laptop. Write it down." I opened my laptop on the kitchen table. I created a new document. I named it simply November Timeline. I started typing. November 27th, 6:15 p.m. Darlene Campbell struck Noah Campbell on the left cheek with an open hand. Witnessed by Miles Campbell, Tessa Campbell, Maris Klein. Darlene admitted to contact, claiming it was accidental. November 27th, 6:30 p.m. Peyton and Miles Campbell leave the premises. November 28th, 8:30 a.m. Text from Lydia Campbell, alleging outburst. November 28th, 8:45 a.m. Voicemail from Joyce Campbell, alleging volatility and unhinged behavior. As I typed, a strange sensation washed over me. The panic began to recede. The shaking in my hands stopped. By reducing the horror to black pixels on a white screen, I was stripping Darlene of her power. She relied on emotion, on implication, on the murky waters of family dynamics, but facts were cold, facts were hard, and facts did not care if Darlene was the matriarch of Briar Glen. I was just finishing the entry for Joyce's voicemail when Miles walked into the kitchen. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. He wore an old t-shirt and sweatpants, looking less like a successful project manager and more like a man serving a prison sentence. "Morning," I said. "There is coffee." He poured a cup and stood by the window, looking out at the street. "Is he okay?" Miles asked, nodding toward the living room where Noah was now watching cartoons. "He is resilient," I said, "but he is asking questions." Miles sighed. He turned to face me. "My phone blew up this morning," he said. "Aunt Lydia, Uncle Grant, even the pastor." "What did they say?" I asked, though I already knew. "They are worried about you," Miles said. He used air quotes, his face twisting in disgust. "They say you are spiraling, that I need to take control of my house." I typed the phrase, "take control of my house," into my document. "And what did you say?" I asked. Miles looked at his coffee. I didn't answer. He said, "I couldn't. I just turned the phone off. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat. Silence was better than capitulation. I have an appointment with a lawyer this afternoon." I said. Miles froze. "A lawyer, Peyton. Is that? Are we there?" "We are past there." "Miles. She has a committee. She has Maris filming us. She planted a stolen item on our son. We are not just there. We are under siege." Miles slumped into a chair. "Neve called her," I said. "She is a family law specialist. You should come." "I can't," Miles said quickly. "I have a conference call, and I can't handle the legal stuff today." "Peyton?" My head is pounding. He was retreating. He was overwhelmed. I didn't push him. I needed him strong, not broken. And if he needed a day to hide in his cave before he could fight, I would give him that day. "Just one thing," I said. I turned the laptop toward him. "Check your email." Miles frowned. "Why?" "Because I got a forward." I clicked on the tab for my email. There, at the top of the inbox, was a message with the subject line FWD, Mistake Family Wellness Check-In. It had been forwarded to me from an anonymous email address, likely Tessa, trying to warn me without leaving a trail. The original email was addressed to Miles. It was from the Briar Glen Community Chapel. "Dear Miles, in light of the recent concerns brought to the Family Care Committee regarding the stability of your home environment, we would like to invite you and Peyton to a mediation session next Tuesday. This is a safe space to discuss the challenges you are facing with Noah's behavioral issues and Peyton's emotional regulation. We want to support you in restoring a God-centered hierarchy to your family. Yours in service, the committee." Miles read the screen. His face went white. "Behavioral issues," he whispered. "Emotional regulation." "They are not suing us." "Miles," I said, "they are trying to shame us. They want to haul us in front of a group of church elders and make us confess our sins so they can fix us. It is a tribunal." I didn't get this," Miles said. He pulled out his phone and frantically refreshed his inbox. "It is in your spam folder. Probably. Or Darlene sent it to your old address." I said, "But she made sure I saw it. She wants me to know that the community is talking about me. She wants me to feel small." "What if she ruins me?" Miles whispered. The fear in his voice was raw. "Peyton, she knows everyone, the partners at my firm. Half of them go to that church. If she starts telling people I am unstable, if she says I am in a cult or something, she won't say you are unstable." I said, "She needs you to be the victim. She will say I am the crazy one, and you are the poor, henpecked husband who needs rescuing." Miles put his head in his hands. "I can't go to that meeting," he said. "We are not going." I said firmly, "We are not acknowledging it. It is a trap. If we go, we validate their authority to judge us. We stay home." But what if she calls my boss? Miles asked. What if she calls HR at Redbridge? Then we deal with it, I said. But we do not walk into the lion's den just because the lion sent an invite. I closed the laptop. I am going to the lawyer. I said, you stay with Noah. Do not answer the door. Do not answer the phone. I stood up to leave. But my phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID made my blood run cold. Lakeward Elementary. It was Saturday. The school was closed. But the automated system sometimes sent alerts. I answered. Hello, Mrs. Campbell. It was a woman's voice. This is Mrs. Higgins, the school secretary. I know it is Saturday, but I'm in the office catching up on some filing, and I just wanted to clarify a voicemail I found on the general line. My stomach dropped. Yes, we received a message from a Darlene Campbell. Mrs. Higgins said she identified herself as Noah's grandmother. She said she was calling to coordinate pickup logistics for next week. She mentioned that there might be some changes to his schedule due to a family emergency and asked for the current authorized pickup list. I gripped the phone so hard I thought the screen might crack. She called the school. She was trying to find out who was allowed to pick up Noah. She was testing the perimeter. Mrs. Higgins, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. There is no family emergency, and Darlene Campbell is not authorized to pick up Noah. Ever. Oh, Mrs. Higgins said. Her tone shifted from helpful to professional. I see. She was very insistent. Mrs. Higgins continued. She said she was just trying to help you because you were overwhelmed. I am not overwhelmed. I said, Mrs. Higgins, please listen to me carefully. My mother-in-law is not to have access to Noah. She is not to be given any information about his schedule, his attendance, or his location. Understood. Mrs. Higgins said, I will put a note in the file immediately. We need a password. I said, I remember Jocelyn's advice. No one picks him up or gets information without a verbal password. Smart. Mrs. Higgins said, What would you like it to be, Dragon? I said, looking at Noah in the other room. Done, she said. I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, Mrs. Campbell, but something about the voicemail. It felt off. I wanted to check. You did the right thing. I said, thank you. I hung up. I looked at Miles. She called the school. I said, she tried to get the pickup list. Miles looked like he was going to be sick. I left the house. I needed to be in a room with professionals. I needed to be where laws mattered more than casseroles and passive-aggressive prayers. Calder Family Law was located in a strip mall 3 towns over. Nestled between a chiropractor and a dry cleaner, Neve Calder was a woman in her 50s with short, steel-gray hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished the story, the slap, the place card, the letter, the school call, she set her pen down. Okay, Neve said. Here's the reality. She leaned forward. You are dealing with a high-conflict personality. She said, she does not want resolution. She wants compliance. If she cannot have compliance, she will seek destruction. She tapped her pen on the pad. The slap is assault. Neve said, technically, but without a police report filed last night, and with no severe injury, it is going to be a he said she said situation. Child Protective Services would likely view it as a family dispute unless there is a pattern. There is a pattern of emotional abuse, I said. The court does not care about emotional abuse as much as we wish it did. Neve said bluntly, unless there are physical scars or severe neglect. Judges try to keep grandparents involved. In this state, grandparents have standing to petition for visitation if they can prove a pre-existing relationship and that cutting them off causes harm to the child. So she can sue us, I asked. She can. Neve said, but she has to prove that you are unfit to make the decision to cut her off. That is why she is building the volatile narrative. That is why she staged the theft. She is manufacturing evidence that you are unstable so she can argue that her intervention is necessary for Noah's safety. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. So what do? We build a wall, Neve said. She started writing a list. 1, no verbal communication. ever. Everything is email or text. If she calls, let it go to voicemail. We need a paper trail. 2, we send a formal cease and desist regarding the defamation. If she tells the church committee you are unstable, we threaten to sue for slander. 3, you set clear, rigid boundaries. If she wants to see Noah, she petitions the court. We do not give her casual access. We make her work for every inch. And 4, Neve said, looking up, you need to secure your husband. I frowned. What do you mean? She's going to squeeze him. Neve said, financial pressure, emotional guilt. She will try to peel him away from you. If he wavers, if he signs anything, if he agrees to a compromise behind your back, your case collapses. You need to know exactly where he stands. I nodded. I knew where he stood. He stood in the doorway, terrified. I left the office with a headache, but also with a plan. Neve had given me a template for a boundary letter, short, factual, emotionless. I sat in my car in the parking lot and made the second call. I dialed the number for Hollis and Wren Legal. I had looked it up online, verifying it was a real firm in the city. It was a Saturday, but the voicemail gave an emergency number for trust administration. I called it. A man answered. This is Arthur Wren. Mr. Wren. My name is Peyton Campbell. My husband is Miles Campbell. We have a letter regarding the Campbell Family Trust. There was a pause. Ah, yes, Mrs. Campbell. We have been expecting a call, although usually we speak with Darlene. I am calling on behalf of Miles. I said, we have the letter regarding the disbursement. We are confused about the character clauses. Mr. Wren sighed. It was a tired sound. It is a complex instrument. Mrs. Campbell, the late Mr. Campbell wanted to ensure the assets were protected. The trustee, Darlene, has significant discretion. She has flagged some concerns regarding Miles's current situation. What kind of concerns? I asked. She has indicated that Miles is under undue influence, Mr. Wren said carefully, and that there are stability issues in the home. She has suggested that Miles sign a voluntary deferment. A deferment. Essentially, he would agree to delay his access to the trust for another 5 years, allowing Darlene to remain in full control of the principal. She claims it is for his own protection, and if he does not sign, then she has to prove the instability. Mr. Wren said she would have to submit evidence to the board that Miles is unfit. I closed my eyes. Evidence like a video of his wife screaming or a report that his son is a thief. Exactly. Mr. Wren said, thank you. Mr. Wren, that is all I needed to know. I hung up. It all made sense. The pressure, the routine paperwork Miles had mentioned. 2 months ago, Darlene had probably tried to get him to sign the deferment. Miles, in a rare moment of spine, had probably stalled or refused, so she decided to punish him. She decided to create the instability she needed to trigger the clause herself. Thanksgiving wasn't a holiday, it was a setup. She had invited us there to destroy us, record it, and use the footage to keep the money. I drove home. I felt dangerous. I felt like a weapon that had finally been loaded. When I walked in, the house was quiet. Noah was building a Lego set on the floor. Miles was sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. He looked up when I entered. I know why she did it. I said, I threw my purse on the table and sat down next to him. She wanted you to sign a deferment, didn't she? 2 months ago. Miles blinked. How did you? Yes, she sent me some papers. She said it was just to keep things simple for tax purposes. She said I wasn't ready to manage that kind of capital. And you didn't sign. I lost the papers, Miles admitted. I put them in a drawer and forgot. And then she started calling, getting angry. She wasn't angry, Miles. She was desperate. I explained what Mr. Wren had told me. I explained that she needed proof of instability to keep the money if he didn't sign voluntarily. Miles listened, his mouth falling open. She staged the theft. To keep the money, he whispered. She staged the theft to keep you. I said, the money is just the leash. Miles stood up. He walked to the window. He walked back. He looked like he was going to explode. My own mother, he said. He picked up a throw pillow and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a soft thud, but the violence of the motion was real. She slapped my son for a trust fund. He spat. I stood up and put my hand on his arm. So we send the letter. I said, we draw the line. Today. Miles took a deep breath. He looked at me. The fear was still there. But something else was mixing with it. Rage. Do it, he said. I sat down at the laptop again. I opened the template Neve had given me. I customized it. To Darlene Campbell, from Peyton and Miles Campbell. Date November 28th. Darlene, following the events of yesterday, we are implementing an immediate change in our family dynamic. Effective immediately. You are not to contact us by telephone. All communication must be in writing via email. This includes communication with our extended family regarding us. You are not to attempt to contact Noah at his school or attend any of his activities. The school has been notified. We will not be attending the mediation session you scheduled. We are not interested in discussing our parenting with your committee. Any future interaction with Noah will be supervised, limited in duration, and dependent on a respectful acknowledgement of what occurred yesterday. If you continue to spread false narratives about our family to the community, we will be forced to take legal action to protect our reputation. We hope to move forward, but it will be on our terms. Peyton and Miles. I read it to Miles. It is harsh, he said. It is necessary. I said. He nodded. Send it. I hit send. I watched the progress bar slide across the top of the screen. Message sent. My heart was hammering in my chest. I felt lightheaded. We had just declared war on the most powerful woman in our world. We waited. The house was silent. The clock on the wall ticked. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. My phone pinged. It was an email notification. Darlene. She hadn't taken an hour to compose a response. She hadn't called a lawyer. She had replied instantly, fueled by the pure, white-hot narcissism of a woman who had never been told no. I opened the email. There was no subject line. There was no salutation. There was just one sentence. You have no idea what you've started. I read it out loud. Miles went pale. What does that mean? He whispered. It means she isn't stopping. I said, it means she is escalating. I looked at the screen. I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt a grim, cold determination. Okay, Darlene. I thought, you want a war? You got one. The email Darlene sent. You have no idea what you have started, hung over our house like a storm front. For 2 days. We lived in a state of high alert silence. We kept the curtains drawn. We screened every call. I felt like a sentry manning a watchtower, waiting for the enemy to crest the hill. She did not wait long. It was Tuesday afternoon. Miles was at work, trying to pretend his life wasn't imploding, and I was in the living room helping Noah with a math worksheet. The sun was shining, a cruel contrast to the dread sitting heavy in my stomach. A car door slammed outside. I froze. I knew the sound of that engine. It was the heavy, confident thud of a luxury SUV. I moved to the window and peered through the blinds. Darlene's champagne-colored Lexus was parked at the curb, blocking our driveway, but she wasn't alone. Maris Klein was in the passenger seat. As I watched, Maris rolled down the window and held up her phone. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She was filming the approach. Darlene stepped out of the car. She was dressed in a soft pink coat and carrying a wicker basket covered with a gingham cloth. She looked like the grandmother from a storybook warm, benevolent, harmless. She walked up the path to our front door, her heels clicking on the pavement. Noah looked up from the floor. Is that Grandma? He asked. He sounded small. Stay here. Noah, I said, go into the kitchen and get a juice box. Do not come to the door. He scrambled up and ran. I waited until I heard the kitchen door close before I walked to the front hallway. The doorbell rang. Ding dong. Cheerful. Insistent. I did not open it. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the camera app. I switched it to video. My hand was shaking, so I braced it against the wall. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and hit record. Then, I spoke through the closed door. Go away. Darlene, I said. Through the frosted glass. I saw her silhouette shift. She leaned closer. "Peyton," she called out. Her voice was muffled but sickeningly sweet. "Peyton, open up. I brought Noah's favorite pie. Strawberry rhubarb. I know things got heated, but we are family. I just want to hug my grandson. I kept the phone trained on the door. We sent you a letter." "Darlene," I said. My voice was loud enough to be heard through the wood, but flat and emotionless. "We asked you not to come here. We asked for no direct contact. You are trespassing." "Oh, stop being silly." Darlene laughed. It was a nervous, trilling sound. "I am not trespassing. I am his grandmother. I have rights. Peyton, you cannot keep a boy from his family just because you are having a bad week. Now open the door. The pie is getting cold. I am recording this." "Darlene," I said, "I am documenting that you have come to my home uninvited after being told to cease contact. Leave now, or I will call the police." There was a pause. The silhouette went rigid. She turned her head, likely looking back at the car where Maris was filming. She had expected me to open the door. She had expected a screaming match she could edit into a viral clip of the unstable daughter-in-law attacking a sweet old lady with a pie. She had not expected a locked door and a legal warning. "You are being cruel," Darlene hissed. Her voice dropped the sweetness. "You are hurting him. You are keeping him prisoner in there. I am keeping him safe." I said, "Goodbye, Darlene." She stood there for another 10 seconds. I could feel her rage radiating through the wood. She raised her hand as if to pound on the door, then stopped. She knew Maris was recording. She couldn't be seen banging on the door like a maniac. She had to be the martyr. She smoothed her coat. "I will pray for you. Peyton," she said loudly, performing for the street, "I will pray that your heart softens." She turned and walked away. I watched on my screen as she marched back to the car, the basket of pie swinging aggressively in her hand. She got in. The Lexus peeled away. I stopped recording. I saved the video. I named it November 30, Uninvited Visit. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I didn't cry. I felt a strange, cold satisfaction. She had brought a prop to a gunfight. She thought she was playing Happy Families, but I was playing evidence. 2 hours later, the mail arrived. I wasn't expecting anything, but among the bills and flyers was a thick envelope with a return address I didn't recognize: Northline Family Resolution Center. I opened it at the kitchen counter. It was a notification of a filing. "Dear Mrs. Campbell, this letter is to inform you that a request for mediation has been filed regarding the visitation rights of Noah Campbell. The petitioner, Darlene Campbell, alleges that you have unreasonably interfered with the grandparent-grandchild relationship and that such interference is causing detrimental psychological harm to the minor child. Attached is the petitioner's sworn statement." I flipped the page. I read Darlene's statement. The mother, Peyton Campbell, has a history of erratic behavior. On Thanksgiving Day, she removed the child from a family gathering during an apparent emotional episode. Since then, she has increasingly isolated the child from his support system. I read down the page, my eyes widening, and then I stopped. At the bottom of the form, there was a section for witness attestation. A signature was required to verify that the witness had observed the detrimental behavior. The signature read, Miles Campbell. The room spun. Miles? For a second, I thought I was going to throw up. Had he signed this? Had he gone behind my back? Was he playing both sides? But then I looked closer. The signature was loopy, slanted to the right. Miles wrote in a tight, architectural block print. He had never signed his name with a loop in his life. It was a forgery, and not a good one. It looked like someone practicing Miles's name based on a birthday card from 10 years ago. She had forged her own son's signature on a legal document to try and force us into mediation. My phone rang. It was Tessa. I picked up. "Tessa." I said, "Peyton, listen to me," Tessa said. She was whispering, and she sounded like she had been crying. "I am at the house. Mom is out at the store." I went into her office to look for stamps. "Tessa, slow down." I found a binder. "Peyton." It was on her desk. "It is labeled The Campbell Legacy." "Okay." It is not a scrapbook, Tessa said. It is a war plan. There are scripts in here. Printed scripts. Scripts for what? For everyone, Tessa said. Talking points for Aunt Lydia. Talking points for Maris. There is a whole section called Redbridge Strategy. My blood ran cold. Redbridge was Miles's employer. What does it say? I asked. It says Tessa paused, and I heard paper rustling. It lists the phone number for the VP of Operations. It has a bullet point that says, "Express concern regarding Miles's focus and stability," it says. "Suggest that his domestic situation is impacting his fiduciary responsibilities." She gasped. "Peyton, there is a draft letter here. It is anonymous. It says Miles is under investigation for financial impropriety connected to a family trust. It is a lie. But if she sends this to his boss, she is trying to get him fired." I said, "She is trying to break him." Tessa sobbed. "She thinks if he loses his job, he will have to come crawling back to her for money, and then she will have him." I looked at the forged signature on the table. She is not just trying to break him. Tessa, she is committing crimes. I told Tessa about the Northline document. "Oh my God," Tessa whispered. "She has lost her mind." "No," I said. "She hasn't lost it. She is using every inch of it. Tessa, take pictures of those scripts. Send them to me. Now. I have to go. I hear the garage door." The line went dead. I stood in the kitchen, the forged document in one hand and my phone in the other. Darlene was going to scorch the earth. She didn't care if Miles had a career. She didn't care if he had a reputation. If she couldn't own him, she would destroy him so that nobody else could either. When Miles came home, I didn't ease him into it. I couldn't. We sat at the table. I showed him the forgery. He stared at it for a long time. He traced the loopy signature with his finger. "She did this," he whispered. "She filed it." I said, "It is a legal filing." "Miles, she forged your name to sue your wife." He looked up at me. His face was a mask of betrayal so deep it looked like physical pain. "And there is more." I said. I showed him the photos Tessa had sent. The Redbridge Strategy. The anonymous letter drafted to his boss. Miles read the screen. He read the words that were designed to dismantle the career he had built for 12 years. He put the phone down. He didn't yell. He didn't throw a pillow this time. He went very, very quiet. "She wants me fired," he said. "She wants you dependent." I corrected. He stood up. "Get your coat," he said. "Where are we going?" "We are going to my office," he said. "We are going to meet with HR. Now it is 6 o'clock. I have the director's cell number." Miles said, "He is still there. I am not waiting for her to mail that letter. We are going to nuke it before it lands." The conference room at Redbridge Materials was glass-walled and sterile. The HR director, a man named David Chen, sat across from us. He looked tired, but attentive. Miles did the talking. I watched him, and for the first time in 10 years, I saw the man he could be without Darlene's shadow blocking his sun. He was articulate. He was calm. He was protecting his family. "David," Miles said, "I am facing a complex family situation. My mother is currently experiencing a severe mental health crisis. She has become fixated on my son and my wife." He slid the photos of the Redbridge Strategy scripts across the table. "We have reason to believe she intends to contact the firm to make false allegations against me in an attempt to damage my employment." Miles continued, "She believes that if I am unemployed, I will be forced to return to her sphere of influence." David looked at the photos. He looked at the script suggesting an anonymous tip about financial impropriety. He looked up at Miles. "This is extreme," David said. "It is harassment." Miles said, "I wanted to bring this to you preemptively. There is no truth to any claim she makes. My record here speaks for itself. But I needed you to know the source." David nodded. He closed the file. "Thank you for bringing this in. Miles," he said, "I will flag your file. If any communication comes in from Darlene Campbell or any anonymous source regarding your character, it will be treated as a security matter, not a personnel issue. We will not entertain it." He paused. And Miles, if she shows up here, we will have security escort her off the premises. You are safe here. Miles exhaled. It was the sound of a man putting down 100-pound weight. Thank you, David. We walked out to the parking lot. The night air was crisp. You did good, I said. He took my hand. His grip was firm. She doesn't get to take my work, he said. That is mine. The next morning, Neve Calder went on the offensive. She sent the cease and desist via courier. It wasn't a polite letter. It was a legal grenade. It cited the unauthorized school contact. It cited the forged signature on the Northline filing, which Neve noted was a felony. It cited the attempted interference with Miles's employment. And then, it dropped the hammer on Maris Klein. Notice is also given regarding the distribution of digital media. Any video recordings taken of the minor child, Noah Campbell, without parental consent are considered a violation of privacy. Be advised that we are aware of edited footage being prepared for distribution. The publication of any such footage that misrepresents the events to defame Mrs. Peyton Campbell will result in immediate litigation for libel and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We knew Maris had been editing. Jocelyn Hart had texted me a link to a private, unlisted YouTube video titled, "Pray for the Campbells," which showed a 3-second clip of me looking angry at the dinner table with no sound. It was circulating among the church prayer chain. But I had the door video. I posted it. Not publicly. I posted it to my private Facebook page, visible only to friends. But I knew I had mutual friends with Darlene's circle. I captioned it simply, "The truth of the visit. Harassment is not love." In the video, Darlene's voice was clear. I have rights. You cannot keep a boy from his family. And then, the kicker, the sudden switch from sweetness to rage when she realized she wasn't getting in. It was boring. It was factual. And it popped the balloon of her martyrdom instantly. You couldn't claim you were a sweet, rejected grandmother when the video showed you trying to bully your way past a locked door after receiving a legal notice. Darlene's reaction was swift. She didn't sue. She pivoted. 2 days later, an invitation arrived. Not by email, by courier. It was a heavy, cream-colored card with gold lettering. The Campbell Family Reconciliation Dinner, hosted by Darlene and Grant Campbell, Cedar Sage Restaurant, Saturday, December 5th, 7:00 p.m. Let us put aside our differences and break bread in the spirit of forgiveness. It was a trap. Cedar Sage was the most expensive, most public restaurant in Briar Glen. It was where the mayor ate. It was where the church elders ate. If we went, we were accepting her frame that this was just a difference of opinion to be smoothed over with appetizers. We would be on her turf, surrounded by her witnesses. If we argued there, we would look like monsters. If we didn't go, she would sit at an empty table with a tragic face, telling the entire town that she had tried everything. But we were just too hard-hearted to accept her olive branch. She was trying to regain public control. She wanted an audience. We are not going, Miles said, tossing the invite into the recycling bin. No, I agreed, but we need to handle Grant Campbell, Miles's father. He had been a ghost in this story, a quiet, shuffling man who spent most of his time at the golf club or in his den. He never argued with Darlene. He just handed her his credit card and looked at the floor. But that night, Miles's phone showed a voicemail from a number he didn't check often. His father's cell. We sat on the couch and listened to it. Miles, it is Dad. Look, I know what your mother is doing. I tried to tell her to stop. She is not listening. She is getting worse. Son, I found her in the office last night talking to herself. About the money. About you. I think I made a mistake, letting it go this far. I'm just so tired. But you need to watch your back. Call me if you can. Miles stared at the phone. He never calls. Miles whispered. He hasn't called me without her prompting in 5 years. He is scared. I said, he sees the train coming off the tracks. We need to see him. Miles said, alone. We can't go to the house. I said, she will be there. I know where he will be tomorrow. Miles said, Thursday mornings. He goes to the barber shop on Main. Old Calm Frank's place. Darlene never goes there. It smells like hair tonic and cigars. She hates it. We found Grant in the back chair of the barber shop. He was wrapped in a cape, his eyes closed, a hot towel on his face. The barber, Frank, gave Miles a nod and stepped away to give us privacy. "Dad," Miles said softly. Grant jumped. He pulled the towel off his face. He looked older than I remembered. His skin was papery, his eyes watery and rimmed with red. "Miles," he rasped. "Peyton. You shouldn't be here. If she finds out." "Let her find out," Miles said. "We are done hiding." "Dad," Grant sat up. He looked at us with a mixture of shame and relief. "I got your message," Miles said. Grant nodded. He rubbed his face with a trembling hand. "She is losing it. Miles, I mean it. The church committee, the lawyers. She is obsessed. She stays up all night writing those scripts. She is convinced that if she just pushes hard enough, you will fold. Why, I asked. Why is she doing this?" "Grant, it is not just about control. It feels desperate." Grant looked at me. He hesitated, then sighed. "It is the trust," he said. "We know about the trust," Miles said. "We know she wants to control the money." "No," Grant said. "You don't understand. She doesn't just want to control it. She thinks it is hers." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You have to understand the history." Grant said, "My father, your grandfather. He hated Darlene." Miles blinked. "What, he hated her?" Grant repeated. "He thought she was social climbing. He thought she was manipulative. When he died, he skipped a generation. He left the bulk of the estate to you, Miles, in a trust. He gave me a stipend. But he locked Darlene out completely." I listened, fascinated. This was the missing piece. "She has spent 30 years furious about that." Grant said, "She felt robbed. She felt like your grandfather stole her future. She thinks that money belongs to the Campbell matriarch, not to a boy." He looked at me. "And now? Peyton. She sees you taking her son. She sees you raising her grandson. And in her mind, you are doing it again. You are the thief. She thinks I am stealing her life," I whispered. Grant nodded. "She thinks you are stealing her second chance. She wanted to use that money to be the queen of Briar Glen. If Miles gets it, if Miles leaves, she is just an old woman in a big house with a husband she doesn't respect." He reached out and grabbed Miles's hand. "She is broke. Miles." Miles froze. "What? She's broke," Grant whispered. "The stipend is gone. The house, the cars, the church donations. She spent it all trying to keep up appearances. We're leveraged to the hilt. She needs the trust to disperse. She needs you to sign that deferment so she can collect management fees as trustee. If you take the principal, the entire arrangement collapses." I stared at Grant. It wasn't just narcissism, it was survival. She was drowning in debt, pretending to be a queen, and Miles's 35th birthday was the expiration date on her lifestyle. "That is why she needs me to be unstable," Miles said, his voice shaking. "If she can trigger the character clause, she keeps control. She keeps the fees." "Yes," Grant said. "And if I take the money, then she is destitute," Grant said, "or close to it." The barber cleared his throat from the front of the shop. "You folks best wrap it up," he said. "I see a Lexus pulling into the drugstore across the street." Grant went pale. "Go, please. Just don't let her win. Miles. But don't expect her to stop. She can't stop. She is fighting for her life." We left through the back door. We walked down the alleyway to our car. I took Miles's arm. "She is desperate," I said. Miles nodded. His face was hard. "Desperate people are dangerous," he said. We got in the car. I thought about the reconciliation dinner. I thought about the pie. I thought about the slap. It wasn't hate. It was hunger. She was a starving animal cornered in a velvet room, and she would eat her own young to survive. We drove home in silence. We had the truth now. We had the leverage. But as we pulled into our driveway, I realized something else. When you corner a starving animal, It doesn't surrender. It attacks. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Darlene. I saw you leaving the barber shop. Nice try turning Grant against me. But he doesn't matter. I have played my ace. I looked at Miles. What ace, I asked. A siren wailed in the distance. Then another. They were getting closer. They weren't police sirens. They were ambulance sirens. And they were coming toward our house. I looked out the window. A black sedan was parked across the street. A man in a suit was standing by the curb. That is not an ambulance, Miles said. I looked at the text again. My ace. The man across the street walked toward us. He held up a badge. Child Protective Services. He said, "We have received a report of immediate danger to a minor. Darlene hadn't just sued. She had swatted us. And this time, she wasn't bringing a pie." The visit from Child Protective Services lasted exactly 45 minutes. It should have been the most terrifying 45 minutes of my life. A stranger with a badge walking through my home, opening my refrigerator, looking into my son's bedroom, asking my husband if he felt safe, but it wasn't terrifying, it was clarifying. The caseworker, a weary but sharp-eyed man named Mr. Henderson, realized within 10 minutes that he was walking through a malicious report. He saw the spotless kitchen. He saw the timeline I had printed out. He saw the photos of Noah's cheek. He saw the cease and desist letter Neve Calder had sent when he interviewed Noah alone. In the living room, while we waited in the kitchen, Noah simply told the truth. "Grandma hit me at Thanksgiving. My mom took me home. We built Legos today." "Mr. Henderson closed his file. He looked at me and Miles. "I am marking this as unfounded," he said, "and I am flagging the reporter for potential malicious use of state resources. You won't hear from us again." When the door clicked shut behind him, the silence in the house was absolute. Miles looked at me. He didn't look scared anymore. He looked like a man who had watched his mother try to burn down his house with his son inside. "Call her," Miles said. I picked up my phone. I typed a single message. "Tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning, the Daily Grind on 4th Street. Come alone. No cameras. You have 15 minutes to agree, or we file the harassment suit." Her reply came in 30 seconds. "I will be there." The Daily Grind was a neutral zone. It was loud, filled with the clatter of espresso machines and the chatter of college students. It was public. It was safe. We arrived at 9:50. We bought coffee. We sat at a table in the center of the room, visible from every angle. 10 o'clock came and went. "She is doing it on purpose," Miles said, checking his watch. "She wants us to wait. She wants to be the one who makes the entrance. Let her." I said, "She is not making an entrance. She is missing her cue." At 10:12, the door opened. Darlene swept in. She was dressed for a funeral, or perhaps a coronation. She wore a black wool coat with a fur collar, a hat with a small veil, and leather gloves. In her hands, she carried a wicker basket, another pie. She scanned the room, saw us, and composed her face. She didn't look angry. She looked tragic. She walked toward our table with the slow, burdened gait of a saint walking to the stake. She reached the table and set the basket down. "Strawberry rhubarb," she said softly. "I know you didn't open the door yesterday. I didn't want it to go to waste." She sat down. She peeled off her gloves, finger by finger. She looked at Miles, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I have been praying all night," she said. Her voice was a masterclass in modulation, loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear the tremble, quiet enough to seem intimate. "I have been on my knees, asking God where we went wrong." She reached for Miles's hand. He pulled it back, resting it in his lap. Darlene flinched, then looked at me. "Peyton," she said, "I know we have different styles. I know I can be passionate. I care so deeply about this family. If my zeal has been misinterpreted as overbearing, then I am ready to be the bigger person and say I am sorry you feel that way." It was the classic narcissist's apology. "I am sorry you feel that way. Not I am sorry I hit your son. Not I am sorry I called CPS." I looked at her. I didn't interrupt. I let the silence hang there, heavy and awkward. I let her sit in the discomfort of her own performance. Are you finished? I asked. Darlene blinked. I am trying to build a bridge here. Peyton, I'm trying to heal this rift before it destroys us. She looked around the room, making sure people were watching. I just want to see my grandson, she said, her voice catching. Is that a crime? To want to love a child? I leaned forward. I placed my hands flat on the table. I spoke clearly. I did not whisper. You don't get access anymore. Ever. The words landed like stones in a still pond. Darlene froze. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. The tragic mask slipped, just for a second, revealing the sharp, panicked eyes underneath. Excuse me, she said. You heard me. I said, you don't get access. Not today. Not at Christmas. Not ever. Darlene laughed. It was a high, jagged sound. You can't do that, she said. You are his mother. Yes, but I am the matriarch of this family. You are a guest in this lineage. Peyton, you are nothing. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a hiss. I will take this to court, she whispered. I will take this to the committee. I will take this to people who matter. Do you think you can stand against me in this town? I built this town. I know every judge. I know every board member. I will paint you as a monster. Peyton, I will make sure you never work in this county again. She was confirming it. Noah wasn't a person to her. He was leverage. He was a pawn she could capture to prove she was still the queen. I smiled. It was a cold, tired smile. You can try. Darlene, I said, but you have a problem. I reached into my bag. I pulled out a manila folder. I slid it across the table. Inside were copies, not originals. I wasn't stupid, but clear, high-resolution copies. The photo of Noah's cheek, the sticker from Everwood Antiques on the bottom of the heirloom turkey, the forged signature on the Northline mediation filing, the Red Bridge strategy scripts Tessa had photographed, and on top, the letter from Hollis and Wren regarding the trust fund. Darlene looked down. She saw the letterhead. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like she had been embalmed. We know. Darlene, I said. She touched the paper with a trembling finger. We know you are broke. I said. We know the trust money isn't yours. We know you need Miles to sign the deferment so you can keep drawing management fees to pay for your lifestyle. Darlene looked up. Her eyes were wide, terrified holes in her face. You broke into my records, she whispered. No, I said, we just started paying attention. I pointed to the document with the forged signature, and this I said, this is a felony. Darlene, forging your son's signature on a legal filing, Neve Calder is holding the original. If you file one more motion, if you make one more call to the school, if you send one more wellness check email, we walk this directly to the district attorney. Darlene sat back. She looked small. The fur collar seemed to swallow her up. She looked at Miles. Miles, she pleaded. Her voice was thin now, desperate. Miles, tell her she is wrong. I did this for us. I did this to protect the legacy. Miles looked at his mother. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man who had finally put down a heavy backpack he had been carrying since he was a child. There is no legacy. Mom, he said. Miles, there is just you, Miles said. Pretending to be rich, pretending to be perfect, and hurting everyone who gets in your way. He took a breath. I am tired of being managed. Mom, I am 34 years old. I am not signing the deferment. I am taking the trust administration to a third party next week. Darlene gasped. You can't. That is my money. It was never your money, Miles said. It was grandfather's money, and now it is mine, and I am going to use it to get my family away from you. Darlene's hands curled into claws on the table. She looked around the room, desperate for an ally, desperate for a weapon. Your father. She spat. Your father won't allow this. Grant agrees with me. He knows you are unstable. He is on his way here right now. I texted him. When he walks through that door, he is going to tell you exactly what we think of this rebellion. She pointed a shaking finger at the door. "He is coming," she announced, raising her voice so the nearby tables could hear. "My husband is coming to settle this." I looked at her calmly. "Grant isn't coming." "Darlene," I said. "He is," she shouted. "We met with him yesterday," Miles said quietly. Darlene froze. She looked like she had been slapped. "You what?" "We met him at the barber shop," Miles said. "He told us everything. Mom, he told us about the debt. He told us you have been spiraling. He told us he is afraid of you." Darlene's mouth worked, but no sound came out. Her last bluff had collapsed. Her husband, her financial shield, her silent enabler, he had defected. She was completely alone. She stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. The entire coffee shop went silent. "This is a lie," she screamed. She threw her hands up, addressing the room. "These people are liars. This woman," she pointed at me. "She has brainwashed my son. She is stealing my family. She is a thief." People stared. They held their coffees halfway to their mouths. They watched the woman in the fur coat unraveling in the middle of the morning rush. I did not stand up. I did not shout back. I stayed seated. I took a sip of my coffee. "Sit down." "Darlene," I said. My voice was low, calm, and reasonable. "You are making a scene." "I am not making a scene," she shrieked. "I am the victim here. I am a grandmother who just wants to love her child. And you are a devil." She grabbed the basket of pie. For a second, I thought she was going to throw it at me. But she didn't. She realized, perhaps in the last functioning corner of her brain, that throwing a pie would be the final nail in her coffin. She slammed the basket onto the table. It hit with a dull thud. "Keep it," she hissed. "Choke on it." She turned and marched toward the door. She held her head high, but it was a brittle, fragile dignity. Everyone in the room watched her go. They saw the shaking hands. They saw the desperation. They saw a woman who had lost everything because she refused to share anything. The door slammed shut behind her. The silence in the coffee shop held for another 3 seconds. Then, the hum of conversation started up again. Miles looked at me. "Is it over?" he asked. "No," I said. "People like her never really stop. She will badmouth us to the committee. She will write letters. She will try to find a loophole in the trust." I reached across the table and took his hand. "But she has no power over us anymore," I said. "She can scream all she wants, but she is on the outside of the glass now." Miles looked at the untouched basket of pie. "I am proud of you," he said. I looked at him. I saw the husband I had almost lost, and the father Noah needed him to be. "I am proud of us," I said. I picked up the pie basket. "Let us go," I said. Where Miles asked, "To the park," I said. "Noah is waiting, and I promised him we would feed the ducks." We stood up and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving the pie, the folder, and the old life on the table. The sun was shining outside. It was cold, but it was bright. We had drawn a line in the sand, and for the first time in 8 years, we were standing on the right side of it. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope Peyton's journey reminded you that boundaries are not just lines we draw for others, but circles of protection we draw for ourselves. I would love to know, where are you listening from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, family drama, and standing your ground. Let me know your thoughts in English in the comments. Did Peyton go too far? Or did Darlene get exactly what she deserved? I read every comment, and I can't wait to hear what you think. Until next time.